Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Twin Oaks Family Farm. We're in Southeast Ohio, USA. Thanks for joining us on our YouTube channel, Twin Oaks Farm Poultry. As you can probably guess, we are in the meat bird production barn. So these are Cornish Rock Cross meat chickens, and I want to catch you up to date on this flock of them because they are actually 36 days old. And they are really finished for poultry production. So we will be taking them to a USDA inspected processor to be butchered and processed into poultry, which we actually promote by word of mouth and direct market in Southeast Ohio, USA, in our part of the world. And we love to show y'all in the barn, behind the scenes, how we produce wholesome chicken start to finish in 5 or 6 weeks from Cornish Rock Cross meat chicken. So kind of walking through the pen, going to take a look at the birds again. Before we do, want to tell you about 3 things I want to accomplish for our YouTube channel here, Twin Oaks Farm Poultry, and share with y'all our YouTube community here, and going to try to just put it all in the same video today. So it's Watch It Later Wednesday, for one thing. This is July 17th, 2024. It's a Wednesday, and we started Watch It Later Wednesday, where I'm taking some videos from my Watch It Later list, watching them finally, because I've put them on there with the intention of following up and watching them later, and I've really gotten into a habit of just pressing Watch Later and click and forget. It goes to the watch later list, and then I don't think about it again. And I saw that accumulate to 100 plus videos, and I thought, hey, it's time to get disciplined about go back and watch them, or stop pressing watch later and just clear that list and say forget about it. So Watch It Later Wednesday, going to share that with y'all, update you a little more on this flock that's currently in production. And we have an intervention pen of birds that I want to show you. And an intervention pen for us just means we've observed something about a bird that made us want to put it in a separate pen, most of the time because the bird might be having some troubles getting around, some mobility struggles. And when a bird is in like a group of 100, 200, 300, 400 and has mobility struggles, it can get trampled pretty easily because it either can't get out of the way of the other birds, or it just doesn't have the will to get out of the way of the other birds. So when we see that happen, we try to take that individual, move it to an intervention pen where there's just less competition to get to food, to get to water, and there's more opportunity for that bird to move around a little bit without having to compete with the other members of the flock. So we do have an intervention pen. Want to show that to y'all. And I will add that we are going to do a members only video with a little more information on that intervention pen and those birds that will be uploaded for today. So you might want to consider memberships here on our channel. We just had that opportunity opened up to us by YouTube. We're now part of the YouTube Partner Program. That's exciting for us. And we have 3 categories of membership. So you can actually use either a join button. If there's a join button under the video as it's playing, you can click that. I was told there were some instances where that join button wasn't showing, so I will in the comments include a link that should be active that you can click on that will take you to information about our memberships. And we really hope to add memberships to the Twin Oaks Farm Poultry channel. It's a way to help us support the work that we're doing producing food on a small, independent, family-run farm operation. So please consider it, and shout out to Tina B. She's our first member. As of right now, what I can see through YouTube Studio, where I can go to find out analytics about our channel, that's the only membership that is showing up. So Tina, thank you so much for getting that started, getting the ball rolling, and thank you for your membership at our channel. We greatly appreciate it. And we have a core of great subscribers and viewers in our community. If it works out for your season of life and resources, hope that you'll consider a membership. Anybody that's watching, and please subscribe either way. We really appreciate the support, the subscriptions, the views, the watch time, the comments, the interaction with the channel. Give the video a thumbs up if you like it. And please feel free to share suggestions in the comments. So let's get back to these birds, okay? Back to these birds. So, update on this flock. 36 days old, going to the processor at 41 days old. Population of the flock right now is 420. So you've probably been following us. Some of y'all have been following the progress of this particular flock. I think the last number that we documented and shared with y'all was 426. So what happened? How'd we go from 426 to 420? Well, we did have 2 birds that had to be culled. And so I'll explain a little bit about that. That, unfortunately, is a part of agricultural operations from time to time, where for some reason an individual in that group of production animals is not thriving, is exhibiting failure to thrive, and as a livestock steward, it can become obvious in an individual occasionally that it's inevitable they are not going to be able to finish production. In fact, they may pass away, die of natural causes on their own before the end of production, or they may actually be suffering such that it's deemed it's a better practice to go ahead and butcher that animal so that it is not continuing to suffer if there's not a outlook that it's going to improve. Okay, so we actually had 2 that had mobility issues to such an extent that they had ceased walking, moving around, ceased going to food and water. We had separated them into an intervention pen. I was actually taking them food and water right to where they were sitting so they had the opportunity to eat and drink without having to get up, which is not a good scenario, but we at least don't want them starving or dehydrating. That's a separate issue than mobility, you know. And we also will work with, like if we have one that's not moving around well, you know, I'll have it stand up and I'll support it somewhat and have it bear some of its weight on its legs, and several times a day have it practice like walking, bearing some of its weight. And oftentimes ones that will show mobility issues, like in the flock at large like this, they get kind of overwhelmed maybe by the number of birds, and it's like they just kind of give up. But then if we put them in a smaller group in an intervention pen and we work with them, they'll overcome those mobility issues and we'll have some success stories. But sometimes it's not going to work out that way for whatever reason. The legs give out, or there may be other issues that are presenting as mobility issues. But if they stop eating and drinking, I mean, there's not a lot we can do for them, because if they stop eating, malnourishment, if they stop drinking, dehydration, and they're not going to be able to survive, and they're not going to be successfully finished as meat production animals. So we did have 2 that were cull birds, so they were butchered on day 35, and then we had 4 that we lost to heat stress through the day on day 35 and overnight between 35 and 36. And so that's really a perfect juncture to kind of mention again, we frequently talk about how our preference is to raise Cornish rock cross meat chickens to 6 weeks and no longer than 6 weeks. And then we've informed y'all here this year during 2024 how we also noticed that we were seeing, I'm going to turn this camera around, we were seeing chickens, Cornish rock cross meat chickens, what we consider finished to our satisfaction, finished in terms of ready to be processed into poultry. We were observing finish to our satisfaction at 5 weeks, and coupled that with, we were getting feedback from clients that really at 6 weeks, some of the birds we had processed into whole chickens were actually bigger than what our clients preferred. So we started putting those 2 things together and kind of reasoning that, hey, if they're finished at 5 weeks, that is going to suit our production goal better than to keep them to 42 days. Because our main production goal is top quality product. And the underpinning of that goal is maximize growth potential, minimize flock loss. Okay? So that's our whole operation method is set up to be measured against that. Maximize growth potential, minimize the risk for flock loss. So what we've observed is when you have birds that are finished, ready to be processed, and we gauge that by observation just because we've practiced and raised enough birds that we can tell that by observation. So if the birds are finished, ready to be processed, then every day that you keep them in production past that, you're kind of playing a game of roulette because they're on borrowed time. They really could die from some cause of mortality at any point, really in production. So once you get them to finished, ideally, you can go ahead and get them processed so that you don't lose birds that you could have got production out of. And this juncture with this flock is a perfect case in point, because if their processing day had been set up at 35 days, these birds would have been out of the barn at daylight on day 35. And they've got size to them. I mean, some of them were okay with like, okay, well, it's nice to have another week. But we would have been satisfied taking them to the processor on day 35. So like I said, if their day had been day 35, we'd have been out of the barn at daylight on day 35. Since it wasn't, and they're still in production for another week, as day 35 went on, we lost 4 birds out of the flock that we would have taken to processing. Okay? 4 birds out of 400 plus isn't bad, but still, it was 4 birds that would have made it to processing that instead are documented as flock loss. And of course, you know, we had the 2 that were cull birds, so they would not have gone to processing, so they would have been mortality anyway. But, you know, you can observe like these birds laying up on their sides. They've converted a significant amount of, well, that one's blocking the view. They've converted a significant amount of feed to meat, because you can imagine that being made into boneless, skinless chicken breast there, or whole chicken. So at any rate, so that's where we talk about we want to maximize growth potential, minimize flock loss. And so we've observed that on our production system, we can frequently see birds finished at 35 days. So we wanted this year to go ahead and try to get them to processing at about 35 days to see if we were satisfied with that outcome. As far as this flock, it just ended up being 41 days because we have to plan so far in advance. We set the processing dates up first, then we work backwards and set the hatch dates, and just the days that the inspector was at the processor and the days that the hatchery was hatching chicks, the way it worked out was their timeline ended up 41 days. So some of the other flocks we're raising this year are 35, 37 days. So in fact, the one right behind this flock will be exactly 35 days. So we'll be interested to see how that flock turns out too. But anyway, so that was just an interesting juncture where we actually saw, flock loss as we got past that 35-day threshold that we would not have had if we were set up to go to processing on that day. So and there again, if you're raising Cornish rock cross meat chickens like for household poultry supply and you're doing your own processing, that's the beauty of that, because you can plan on 5 weeks or 6 weeks if you want to, and then if you decide, well, the bird really could use a few more days, well, then you can just wait. But if the bird's really, really ready, or vice versa, say you were going to go to 7 weeks for some reason, we never would. Some production systems do. But say you were going to go to 7 weeks and you saw birds at almost 6 weeks that you're like, oh, I'm afraid if we don't go ahead and process them, we're going to have some flock loss here. Well, then you could go ahead and process them ahead of time if you're processing your own birds, right? So those are things to consider. But we don't process our own. We have in the past, but we don't. We choose not to. We choose to take them to a USDA inspected processor, okay? And that also gets them the federal inspection seal, which we want on our packages of poultry. for our clients. So there's that part of it. Okay, so that's the one thing. We wanted to update you on the flock. They're doing great. They're right on feed consumption. We plan 4,000 pounds of feed for this flock, which really by the numbers would be for 400 birds. We still have 420. So, you know, we've fed 420 birds for 35 days, and they have feed in the feeders. We're letting them eat that down all the way. And then we still have 250 pounds of feed, of their feed allotment, left for them to finish during production. So we think that's going to work out just perfectly, because we'll put that into their feeders probably tomorrow, and then it'll probably take them till feed withdrawal to eat that down out of the feeders. Okay, so flock's doing good. 420 Cornish Rock cross meat chickens, 36 days old, and we started with 434, so we've only lost 14 out of 434. I know to a lot of us that sounds like a real big number, 14 birds that we've lost, but I haven't run the percentage, but really, relatively speaking, that's not terrible flock loss in a group of Cornish Rock cross meat chickens, at least not according to the research that we've done and to the experiences that we've had too. So we're okay with that. In fact, our number at the processor is 400. So we're definitely hoping to stay above 400. And the number of birds we bought, hey y'all, the number of birds we bought was actually 425, and there was like 9 extra in the boxes. So we're just now, you know, into losing some birds that were on the receipt. So anyway, so we are at 420. So, okay, want to tell you the watch it laters, and then we'll wrap up with showing you the intervention pin. So the watch it laters. So I got 3, okay, and I'm just going to hit the highlights of like the video name and the channel it's on, and something I noticed about either the channel or the video, or something notable about it, and then I'll have a link to each one in comments. Okay, so one I pulled off of my watch later list was from Farmer Always up in Canada. It was their spring, I think it was spring wheat planting with a John Deere 9930 and an air drill seeder. And that John Deere is a huge tractor. Like it's the size of tractor that most of us, if you're not around a farm operation or go to farm shows, you're never going to see a tractor that big potentially in your life. So it's a big machine. So it's just close-ups of that tractor at work and that implement at work, and seeding that spring wheat. Okay, so that's up in Canada, and the channel is Farmer Always. Really neat channel. It's cattle ranch, family run. They show us their operation. They have done some awesome videos about the cows birthing the calves here this spring, early summer. Early summer, I think, is when those have all fallen out on the timeline. So check them out, give them some feedback, but really neat look at a cattle ranch in Canada. So that's Farmer Always, and I think they're at like a little over 2,000 subscribers. That channel is growing and growing, and they do a lot of work on it, put a lot of time into their videos, well done videos. So check them out, Farmer Always, and that one was on spring planting with the John Deere 9930. Another one, this cool, Clucking Around is another channel that I like, United States of America, down in Texas, and this video is from about a year ago, and it's about a look at their chicken coop, their chicken run, this complex of their chicken housing, and I believe the channel's host's husband built all this by hand. I'm sure she was hands-on in it too, but it's just lovely. It's really neat. I love it. So here's something that's really cool about that video and that channel, though, that I was like so excited for them to see these numbers. So the video itself, I think, was put up about a year ago, and the channel itself has a little over 800 subscribers. Okay, so it's a growing channel. It's a growing channel. It's close to 1,000 subscribers. Growing channel. That video, I think it has, I hope I remember right, but I think that video has like 44,000 views on that video. Isn't that cool? So check it out, especially if you have chickens. I think you'll love clucking around video of their chicken coop and chicken run setup. So take a look at it, give them some feedback. Okay, and then the other one. So this is a video I had put on my watch later list a long time ago. The video itself is from about 12 years ago. And, oh, I think it's Linda Bostock is the name of the channel host. And she sounds very knowledgeable. The video is on making a Malin cough syrup. Malin, I may not be pronouncing it right. It's a plant, okay? In this instance, it's making a cough syrup out of the flowers from the plant. And the host does an excellent job of telling you how it's done. And you can research and get background on why you would want to use that plant for a cough syrup. And I kind of took interest in it because we do use a Malin tincture when we have respiratory distress. So I've never had the cough syrup, but I've never had it made into a cough syrup. But anyway, that's why it got my interest. But check that out. So I'll put a link in the comments. I had just wanted to watch that for my own personal knowledge. I don't know that I would end up making that cough syrup. I think the tincture that we use, actually a friend makes it, and I think it's from the dried leaves, and that's what goes into making that tincture. So anyway, but it's something I wanted to share with y'all. It was on my watch later list. I watched it, got some good information out of the video, so you might want to check it out. I'll put the link in there in the comments. So let's wrap this one up. We'll go over and walk our way over to the intervention pen. So the birds are taking it easy for the most part because it is warm again, but it's a lot better than yesterday. Honestly, I told y'all that we went from 426 to 420, basically from day 35 to day 36. But I figured as day 35 went on and we got into day 36 that we were going to see some flock loss. I was really dreading coming to the barn this morning on their day 36 and opening the doors up because the heat was so much for them to handle yesterday. They really had a hard time with it. So I knew that as they started exerting themselves, that was going to catch up with at least some of them. So 4 of them we saw heat distress cause flock loss in. It was less than a handful, so it was not as bad as I expected, to tell you the truth. So anyway, so 420 is what we're at. But let's go over here to this little intervention pen. Today's like in the 80s. This isn't the intervention pen, that's still the big pen. So today's like in the 80s, okay? So it's not as bad as yesterday was. Yesterday was like in the 60s. Or, sorry, I wish it was in the 60s. They'd have loved it. Yesterday was in the 90s. It got down to the 60s overnight. Yesterday was in the 90s and it was just so hot, okay? So here is a pen that is small, but we're calling it an intervention pen. And y'all can see we have about 5 birds in it, okay? And they have plenty of feed. They have fresh water. And so basically, and look, 3 out of 5 of them are up, standing, moving around, okay? And these 2 also can. But when we put these 5 birds over here, they came over here at different times. When these birds were first put over here, they wouldn't walk at all. They wouldn't even stand up and stay standing up. I had to hold them up. When they were over here in the pen at large, they were not able to get around. They had stopped using their mobility for whatever reason. Either they were overwhelmed or didn't want to compete or their legs were weak or something, but they exhibited leg weakness. So we didn't want to give up on them. We decided to move them, okay? And that's the beauty of any kind of small operation, whether you're raising your own protein supply, your own meat supply, or whether you're getting your meats direct from a small farm. To me, that's one of the #1 beautiful aspects of a small operation. We know that in general, practices have to be kind of dictated by the flock at large, the group at large. But sometimes we have individuals that need a little bit of assistance and need specialized practices. In small operations, we can separate those individuals, provide some intervention, and help them have better quality of life, be more comfortable, and successfully make it to the end of production. Okay, so like that bird, when I put it over here, it couldn't stand up and walk, and it walked all the way from over there over here to where the food is. I don't know if it's gonna, yeah, it's gonna sit down there and eat. And so you know, so there, I think it stepped on the tray was why it looked awkward, but see it, now it's moving. So that's a success story with 5 birds right there. I can say, I almost have no doubt, had these 5 birds been left in the pen at large, I don't think that we would still have them. So they'll probably make it successfully to the end of production because we were able to take some time and intervene. So, and here's some dust bathing. We did put some bedding down yesterday, trying to keep the bedding on top fresh and absorbent for them, help keep them clean, and that helps keep them cooled off a little bit too. There's one dust bathing. So thanks for joining us, y'all. Please join us again at Twin Oaks Farm Poultry.